The Chicagoland area has hosted PBA events continuously dating back to 1962. In '76, it was Gary Dickinson who would rout a rhinestone-clad Ernie Schlegel in Glendale Heights, Illinois. Both eventually would go on to be PBA Hall of Famers. In 1986, George Brown III takes his first career title at the World Open, and in doing so, becomes the first and only black bowler to date to win a PBA title. He now has 5 championships to his credit. In the 1988 World Open, which featured international qualifiers as well as PBA members, really living up to its name as Mats Carlsen from Sweden wins the title, his 3rd championship at the time. Then in 1994, in a match that comes down to the 10th frame, Eric Forkel watched as David Ozio missed a chance to win the title. Eric Forkel took the win in what turns out to be the last World Open. Pretty emotional moment for Forkel. Back here at the Miller High Life Open, Forkel not into this final grouping. So far, we've seen Hoskins take Devaney in the wild card match. Steve will take on Danny Wiseman next in one semifinal. Walter A. Williams, the great champion, is through to the final match. Danny Wiseman now joined by our Randy Peterson.
Danny, was a thriller last week, runner-up finish to the great Brian Voss. How's that affected you coming into this week?
Well, Rano, you know, I didn't win. And, you know, I lost to one of the greatest shot makers ever in this game, and no disappointments here. It kept me focused going into this week. You know, I didn't win, so here I am. I just tried to, you know, once I got in my car and I left, I said, you know, I did what I did, and he beat me, flat out beat me. So, you know, done, game over, on to the next week. Here we are. It's time to play.
Thanks, Danny. Back to you, Rano.
Randy, he's always ready to go. Very emotional, outspoken bowler. One of the most interesting characters on the PBA Tour. Hoskins, equally outspoken, but much more direct way. He gets right to the point. Very succinct person with his skills in mind. 9-pin up for Hoskins on lane 9.
That went very good. Thanks.
Hoskins, very heavily involved in the Republican Party in the state of Florida. You see, 14th year on tour. Hasn't won for almost 2 years, though. Almost exactly to the day. Picks up his spare. He tells us he's going to get himself back home to the Tampa area in time to vote for Jeb Bush.
Yeah, he said his wife the other night was hanging out with the governor of the state of Florida. Oh, I'm sorry. No, his wife met the president.
That's right.
His daughter's cast, Lindsay's cast, was signed by Governor Jeb Bush.
Impressive either way. Here's Wiseman. You see the vitals with him from Baltimore, Maryland.
That's the same shot on the right side of the lane that we saw Jason Couch leave in our last match. This ball is just going to drift a little bit high. Danny's playing a little bit deeper line than Steve Hoskins. That ball just a pinch high, 4-9.
October of last year, North Brunswick, New Jersey, at the Johnny Petraglia Open. The last time Wiseman took home the winner's check. Looking for the tough mark, can't get it, and an open frame for him. So upset at not making the cut in Kansas City. Dragged his gear through the parking lot, almost knocking you over in the process. And shouted, "Never again." A little high there. It'll never happen again. And sure enough, makes the TV show in the finals in Memphis. Back to the show here today.
Yeah, you know, Danny's such a great competitor. He was obviously very unpleased. As you see his matches this week, a great match with Robbie Spigner, we'll talk about a little bit later. Wasn't pleased with his performance. Casey said it wouldn't happen again. I was standing right next to him when he said it, back-to-back shows.
As he dropped his bowling ball bag on your foot, I believe.
Well, no, if that would have happened, my lawyer and Danny, little meeting and all this that he's doing now.
Danny was very upset at not performing well in Kansas City.
I mean, that's, you know, but that's being a competitor. That's what being a competitor is all about.
Hoskins.
And, you know, Steve Hoskins actually throws or has more revolutions and more power than Danny Wiseman. And they're both playing around the same line. The problem is, the difference is Steve's hands up the back, not going quite as far to the right with the ball. Danny Wiseman a little bit more in to out.
Looking for a double here and a 21-pin lead. Third frame. Got it. Very consistent in his wild card match win over Devaney, continuing here in the semis.
And here's a great tip for those folks at home. Slow start for Steve Hoskins, the last 3 steps, real fast. You build up momentum. You go from slow to fast and not vice versa.
Pocket for Wiseman on lane 10.
Now, you're not going to see a whole lot of reaction out of Danny early until he starts getting the ball to face the 1-3 pocket consistently. Starts to get 3 or 4 in a row. Very high average this week. You know, the players that are here right around the 228 to 235 pace in there. Anything less, you just didn't make it to the telecast. And obviously a very high strike percentage. You don't get here by not throwing a lot of strikes.
He came so close last week. Avoids the double wood. Just has 1 pin to contend with for a mark here.
You know, I watched this all night last night with Danny Wiseman. In his last match, he'd go high on one lane. The next time he got over that lane, he'd make an adjustment, and the ball would do that. The adjustment, in my opinion, get a little softer and go around a little bit more.
2 pin has his mark. He claims as soon as the match was over with Brian Voss, the second he hugged Voss and told him what a great job he did, he started to forget about that devastating loss and was able to move forward. Plus the 530 miles he mentioned with you on the road, the drive from Memphis to here in the Chicagoland area. Cranking up that heavy metal rock he loves to listen to.
Man, you could
feet slow, dummy.
You know, it was nice that we showed you that profile of Steve and telling you how slow his feet were, except he forgot to do it that time. You know, you heard him say it. He's got to keep his feet slow.
That number, the lowest strike percentage of any of the 5 finalists left. Picks up his mark with ease. 19-pin lead for Steve Hoskins. Tomorrow, ESPN's Monday Night Countdown gets things started. 7:30 Eastern Time. Here on ESPN, host Stuart Scott and the gang get you caught up on scores and highlights from around the National Football League. Then at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 on the West Coast on ABC Sports, Monday Night Football moves to Green Bay as 2 division leaders. The Dolphins and Pack square off at a chilly and damp Lambeau Field. Join Al Michael, John Madden, Melissa Stark for the game tomorrow night.
And watch the return of Chris Carter, who's actually going to start in that game for the Dolphins tomorrow.
Amazing. Against his ex-NFC Central rival, the Pack.
Lambeau Field.
He's perfect so far, single pin conversions. Treasurer for the Young Republicans of Pasco County, Florida, Steve Hoskins. Very close race there with Jeb Bush. His opponent, Bill McBride.
Steve said he loves to play any kind of sports with his kids, and every Sunday, as of late, they get out in the backyard and they play football. I'm like, well, Steve, aren't they a little small for you to be tackling? He goes, no way, Randy, and they're slow, and I can get them every time.
Full contact.
Just kidding.
Got to make the kids tough somehow. There's Wiseman. Pocket, 10-pin.
Go on like that. Come on. Beat it.
Coming right at you, Danny Wiseman. That great left tap on the 10-pin. I think the really neat thing to watch about Danny is how he posts shots. What I mean by that is when the ball leaves his hand, he can basically just sit there and pose and freeze his body and not move. I mean, that's what it takes to make shots. That's what it takes at this skill level.
Strikes down by 8, and he is.
You know the
Double for Wiseman.
Excuse me, Ronald.
Semi-final match to take on the great Walter Ray Williams in the finals. Danny Wiseman is focused. Steve Hoskins hasn't won for 2 years. He wants the winner's check badly as well.